Hello everyone, welcome to the 13th KK chess series. Today I want to keep on talking about tactics, and specifically, I'm only going to talk about one thing today, and that is attacking the trapped piece. Now, attacking the trapped piece means that when there's a piece that cannot really move freely, you simply can capture it by attacking it. Now, the queen is, generally speaking, the most flexible piece of chess. So it is pretty hard to trap the queen, although in some occasions it is possible. It is more likely that we trap the rook, knight, and the bishop. And today we're going to use 3 examples to illustrate them. Let's begin with this position. This position is an example of trapping the rook. Usually the rook, we would prefer to put it behind the pawn. This is because the rook can move back if it is under threat. For example, this rook over here, if it is attacked, it can simply move back to this baseline. However, this rook seems to be doing nothing, right? It is blocked by its own pawn, so sometimes people would want to move the rooks before the pawns so that it can attack the opponent. However, this pawn also blocks this rook from h3 from retreating, so if it is blocked from the other directions, it might be captured. We see that from this position, this rook cannot move sideways because it is blocked by the queen, and it has no free squares before it. It can't capture this pawn, it's defended by the knight. Can't go to these squares because they are all protected by black pieces. So in conclusion, this rook cannot move. Black can simply capture this rook by attacking it, so what pieces can attack this rook? We see that black can play bishop to d7 over here to attack white's rook. And white literally has no way to prevent black from capturing it in the next move. He can't block this attack. There's no way you can block it. This is giving up the knight. This is giving up the bishop. And you can't move the rook to any squares. So in the next move, for example, white just does nothing. Black then captures this rook easily. Now let's move on to the next position. Next position is about the knight. We see that in this position, black's knight is attacked by the white's pawn. So where should the black move its knight? It can move back to b8, which black is reluctant to do. He has just moved his knight to c6. He can move to e5. White can play f4 and keep on attacking the knight. Black can play knight to b4, which is actually, honestly speaking, a pretty good choice in this position. And black can play knight to a5, which is actually the worst choice he can make. Let's analyze. If black plays knight to a5, white can simply play b4 to attack this trapped knight. We see that in this position, black's knight has literally nowhere to go. It is previously attacked on the c6 square, so it cannot return to c6. This b7 pawn is blocking this knight from retreating. So black has no option but to move forward. Black's knight can go to c4, but this square is guarded by this bishop. And b3 obviously is guarded by the white pawns. So overall, this knight has nowhere to move. We can simply attack this knight with the pawn, and in the next move, we can guarantee capture this knight. Now note that we can also attack this knight with our bishop by playing bishop to d2, or with our queen by playing queen to d2, but they are not the best options. We see that the pawn is worth 1 point. We are very willing to exchange a 1-point pawn with a 3-point knight. However, this bishop is worth 3 points and the queen is worth 9 points. We wouldn't want to exchange it with a 3-point knight. If we attack this knight simply with this bishop, black can play pawn to b6. Now, this knight is guarded by this pawn. Are you going to capture it? If you capture this knight, black then captures your bishop. It's a 3-point trade, and now black is satisfied with it. And if you want to attack this knight again with this pawn, we see that black has moved its b7 pawn already, so it can simply retreat its knight to b7. So in the first place, it is actually better to use this pawn to attack by playing pawn to b4. So if black guards this knight with his pawn, we're still happy to capture this knight. It's a 1 point to 3 point trade, and white is satisfied in this position. Now this is a very common, arguably the most common knight trap in chess. This happens specifically, well, it can happen to black and white both, when this knight on c6 in mirror, which is f6, f3, and c3, is attacked by the center pawn. In this position is this d5 pawn over here. And when it moves to this side on a5, when it's mirrored, it is a4, a h4, and h5. It sometimes have nowhere to escape, and the other side can simply advance its pawn over here, attack this knight, and capture it. Now let's move on to the last position, which is the bishop trap. Let's look at this example. We see that if it's black's move, black can capture this free pawn on a2. Well, this will be a trap if black actually does it. If black plays bishop to a2, white can play pawn to b3. Excellent move, and trap this bishop over here. We see that black's bishop is in a very awkward place. It can't retreat anymore. This diagonal is blocked by white's pawn. It can't break through this line because this b3 pawn is guarded by another pawn. And you can't possibly break through this line in just one move. This bishop obviously can go to b1, it's guarded by the rook. And in the next move, white just plays rook to a1 and captures this bishop. For example, if black plays pawn to h6, white can play rook to a1. Now there's no way you're going to guard this bishop anymore. You just have to trade this 3-pawn piece with a 1-pawn piece, and black is going to lose the game. This is actually a pretty common trap for the bishop, when this bishop over here or in the mirror in these squares want to capture a seemingly free pawn at the edge of the board. Especially, it is a trap when the pawn structure is like this, 3 pawns standing side by side at their starting squares. And when black captures this pawn, white advances his pawn, blocks black's bishop's way to go home, and this pawn is guarded by another pawn over here. So the next move, white can play rook to a1, attacking the bishop, or to play some other moves. Now there are some cases where black can actually take this free pawn and get away with it. For instance, if black somehow gets to control this a1 square, white cannot immediately play rook to a1 and capture this bishop. Or if white has another pawn structure, such as this, when black plays bishop to a2, white cannot play b3 because it's not guarded by this c2 pawn anymore. And the bishop can sometimes get away with it. And another circumstance is that if black captures this bishop and this a file is also open for black, white can block this bishop and trap it at a2, but it might not be able to capture it immediately because black is also guarding it. Therefore, black has time to rescue its bishop on a2. For example, black can play c5 and c4 to break through this pawn and rescue its bishop. So these are 3 common circumstances that you might encounter in playing the game, when you can either trap and capture one of your opponent's pieces, or you might want to be aware of your own pieces being trapped. It is one of the most effective one because people just simply don't notice them. So when you're playing a chess game, try to avoid them yourself and try to find and create these situations for your opponent. Thank you for listening and hope you win a game.